Welcome back to Retro Wednesday at the Tidarium Hangar. This is Mike, and today I want to talk to you about toy lines in the 80s made by Remco. Now, I can't cover every toy line and everything Remco has made, and I always think of them as a much smaller company, but they've had their hands in the toy space for a long time. It's always been a bit of a mystery to me what all was really made by Remco in the 80s, and we'll touch on a couple of things they did prior to the 80s. Then we'll talk about the 80s and a little bit about the 90s, kind of like I did with LJN. That was a fun one too. We'll do this on this Retro Wednesday coming up. Okay, starting out with just a few things they made, something from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So this is, in the 50s, Space Command walkie-talkies. And they look like little space kind of telephones with an antenna on them. They were kind of cool looking, kind of interesting, but it's kind of a sign of the times in the early days. They did some role-playing kind of stuff, role-playing accessories. 1964, they made Munsters figures. These are almost would fall in line with Super Deformed with the ginormous heads, and these are kind of like dolls, but there they are, made not just Herman, but all of them for the most part. And it was a sign of the times, and Munsters was popular back in the 60s. These toys just don't look like they were a lot of fun. They also made something in 1979 called the Incredible Hulk Muscles, and this is instant muscles where you can pump up these muscles underneath. A kid put it on underneath their shirt, pump it up, and kind of looks like it's busting out of the shirt. Kind of a fun idea. So, getting into the 80s, we've got Universal Monsters, and they made them in 8-inch scale, but what I'm most interested in is the 3.75-inch versions of these, and they look pretty cool. I think most collectors are more interested in the 3.75-inch, but both scales go for a ridiculous amount of money on the aftermarket, and there's some question about whether it was 1979 or 1980, so we're leading with this one. There's a sort of a Monsterizer playset piece that they also made at the same time, and it's an interesting gimmick. It's something that would, I guess, be fun to make the monster, but it just really does feel like it's made for Frankenstein. Still, the Universal Monsters are wildly popular with collectors today. I did get a little curious about Dukes of Hazzard. What did they make? And it looks like all they made was a bag. A Dukes of Hazzard bag. So I was a little sad. I was kind of hoping that there would be some alternate line to accompany Mego or something along those lines. Evidently Mego won out the toys, but didn't bother making bags. So that was 1981. 1982, they made Sergeant Rock figures for DC Comics. And there was a comic that supported it, so it should have been more popular than it was. And I have to tell you, they hit a low price point, but the figures, for the most part, are absolute junk. I've got a couple that are mixed into my Joes, and I don't like them at all. And that's just sad, because I would love to collect a line like this if they were better than they are. They do seem to have... It looks like they have knee articulation on these, but the one that I have, I thought it didn't have knee articulation. I got to dig that out and look at it, but the accessories are okay, I guess, but the figures themselves do not hold up. I think they made 16 of these overall, but the good thing about this toy line, though, is it is cheap to collect if you're interested. Also, in 1982, they had the World of the Warlords, or the Lost Worlds of the Warlord, and there were 6 figures total in this collection, and it was based on a comic book, I believe, because it says DC up there and it says a comic. This is one of those things where it was a little confusing to me at first, riding on the tail of He-Man and similarly copying the style of figure, although it's not exactly the same. It's not exactly a knockoff. It's a knockoff of He-Man, trying to ride the wave of success. Nowhere near as successful, meaning most of these figures cost more than the average He-Man figure. They did have catapults that they later reused for Crystar. They had some horses that they used for other things, I'm sure, but I don't really know. And there's so much more to this line than just the figures themselves, but still a whole lot of fun. I probably wouldn't collect too deep into this myself, but other people really seem to like these. That kind of rolls into the Pirates of the Galaxies. And it's not galaxy as in far away, it's galaxies as in the ocean. And I'm a landlubber, so I'm not on the ocean. But this is a fun 6-figure toy line that they made. And with that, each one of these figures came with a little gold piece, or a piece that looked gold or silver. You know, I had their little weapons with them, and they did do a lot of sharing and reuse of parts between these more or less 3 lines that knocked off He-Man that I know of. They might have even made more that I couldn't find, but this is kind of a fun line. They do have soft goods, some of them. Some of them have some vinyl capes, but at the end of the day, it was a fast, quick cash grab, and the figures are kind of fun. The third line that sort of knocked off He-Man in a way was Warrior Beasts, and with these, they were beast-looking creatures that you could have your pirates go up against, or you can have your warlords go up against the Lost World Warlords characters, but with this, some of these are kind of expensive and hard to acquire just to get the figure, and this isn't even everything that they made, it's just a picture of some and sort of the accessories that they had. Still kind of a fun toy line overall, and if you wanted some of these beasts, they're usually mixed in with random He-Man lots if you get lucky. There was also supposed to be this Fortress of Doom playset that never came out that I know of. I don't know of this thing getting released. It seems to be on the wanted to get released list, and looks cool, looks fun, and sort of incorporates all of these things. But lastly, the most blatant ripoff of He-Man is the Conan, but it's not really He-Man ripoff, it's Conan. It's branded. These are actually some of the more expensive, hard to find, kind of classified as the Masters of the Universe knockoff type of figures, or that style with 5.5 inch super muscly figures, but they are interesting and they look kind of cool. They even have the skeleton kind of warrior in there, the jewel thief, the enemy, and they did construct a lot of crazy enemies. But I really don't remember all of these. I'm guessing they made some of them up, but I don't remember all these characters from the movies. It was a very popular movie, and back in the 80s, it seemed like anything Arnold touched turned to gold. Next up, we've got the Saga of Crystar 1980. They've got it down as 1983. And I already did a full video on the Crystar stuff. I think that this is a fun toy line. The clear good guys versus the molten Moltar and his henchman, Magma Man, and all of those. But it is another one that's kind of hard to collect. It's kind of hard to complete this entire line, especially getting the castle, the dragon, and some of the sets, the catapult sets. Those are a challenge to complete. But feel free to check out my Retro Wednesday video about the entire toy line. Not everything I have is 100% complete, but I think this would get you 98% of the way there. Here's another toy line I've never really heard anything about. Mighty Crusaders. Now this appears to be kind of a blending of superpowers from Kenner, and then we have the Secret Wars, and seems to be in that scale of the 4.5 inch kind of scale of figure, and then they each have a shield, and it does look like a nice, bright, colorful, clean, smooth looking toy line that they've probably did a pretty good job with. I have none of these. I've never handled any of them. Still looks like a fun option to mix into your superhero lineup for a reasonable price back in the day. Mantech's also another toy line that they made, which is kind of odd. It is a pre-rip-off of Centurions, and people could say, well, Centurions ripped off Mantech. That is possible. quite a possibility. These pictures here, this is actually some pre-release concept art and prototype stuff. So it does look a little bit different than the actual toy line, but this is another one I've reviewed on the channel. If you want to go watch Mantech, the entire toy line reviewed for Retro Wednesday, feel free. Kind of a fun toy line, but I still like Centurions a lot more. Wish they would have had a playset like this one did. Next up, we've got Zybots. This was another 1984 toy line, and I have to say that these are GoBot knockoffs for the most part. They just copied GoBots way closer to GoBot scale, aesthetic, transformations than Transformers themselves. You could say they tried to copy the mini-bots, but literally these fold in half, most of them. And with that, it's kind of a fun side collecting project. If you like Transformers and you like GoBots, you'd probably like these, and it would probably be pretty easy to complete for the most part. I never try to go after them, track them down, or even look up prices, so I could be completely wrong on that. Zybots, knockoff GoBots. So they ended up making some wrestling figures. In 1985, it's the AWA, or All-Star Wrestlers. This is tag team. This is how a lot of these came packaged, and I gotta say, these go for a lot of money. It's crazy. Underneath all of this exterior stuff, I guess they do sort of copy the He-Man look, but not exactly. But yeah, it's still kind of a copy of the He-Man stuff with these. Didn't really realize that at first, because I'm not so into the wrestling, don't know a whole lot about it. Of course, they made their own wrestling ring. They made a lot of figures. I really don't even know exactly how many figures did they make. Was it 60? Was it 80? I don't know. And they made a lot of 3-packs, and they made some individually carded figures. And with that, looked like if you were into wrestling, you had a lot of options, had a lot of fun. Next, we have the 1986 Karate Kid line. This is another one, Remco. And I do have to say that as a kid, I didn't have any of these. As an adult collecting it, I thought it was very fascinating that they even made them. Although they only really, made 6 characters and I think 3 to 5 variations of each character. Still, it was kind of fun to see this line and put it together. And of course, if you want to go check out a Retro Wednesday of the entire toy line, everything made, and most every accessory, I think I'm missing 1 or 2, but for the most part, it's all represented here. You can check that one out. Fun, Remco, another one of those things that was a little bit confusing trying to piece together a complete collection. Alright, so getting into the 90s, started making stuff, the Steel Tech, Steel Construction System, construction vehicles. They made different sets where you could basically build yourself a vehicle or vehicles, and they really challenged a kid's mind, and I think that's a good thing. It really is a good thing. I don't really know how many people go after this, because you can still get this set. It said it was originally $30, but this is still $30 on eBay right now if you want to go get it. I don't know how complete the set is or anything, but it's kind of one of those things that if you really liked them, collecting them today would be fun and easy. They made other different sets too, like the amusement park Ferris wheel. And then there was what appears to be a Millennium Falcon. And yeah, mega-sized. The last toy line that I know of that they made was SWAT Cats, which oddly enough is a very expensive toy line because it's Remco, their last swan song, and it's SWAT Cats, and they only made 4 figures. This is the whole line. This is everything. I actually have them all, but not all the accessories. So it's one of those things where I bought them as cheap as I could, and turns out what I could have bought them for complete is now what a bare bones figure goes for. Sadly, wish I would have got them complete back when I started collecting them, but it was kind of fun to go after a 4-figure toy line like SWAT Cats. Alright, so let me know what you think about Remco, their impact on the toy line and the toy industry overall. Do you think that some of these toy lines are kind of fun? Do you collect some of them? Or do you look back and think that they were just knockoff junk toys? Because some people kind of think of it like that. And I didn't even have to get into the fact that they were bought out by Azrak Hamway and then sold off to Jakks Pacific in 1997. Yeah, we didn't have to get into all that kind of stuff. Remco is gone, but still around in a way, and I think they left a really good mark, a really fun mark on the 80s. Let me know in the comments below, like, subscribe, and to hang out.